The early sun spilled across Main Street, painting the sidewalks gold as the town slowly came alive. Inside Parker's coffee house, the hiss of steaming milk and the soft clink of ceramic cups filled the air. The smell of roasted beans drifted through the warm space, the kind of scent that wrapped around people like a comfort blanket. Behind the counter, Elliot Parker, the owner, moved quickly, his apron neat, his movements practiced. He'd built his reputation on being the friendly neighborhood barista, the man who greeted everyone by name, at least almost everyone. The bell above the door chimed. A man stepped in, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a faded army green jacket with a small U.S. Army patch sewn neatly on the sleeve. His presence was calm, disciplined, the kind that filled the room quietly rather than demanded attention. He looked around the cafe, smiling faintly, before walking to the counter. "A morning," he said, voice deep but warm. "One black coffee, please. No sugar." Elliot glanced up from the espresso machine. The man's politeness seemed genuine, but something in Elliot's expression changed the moment he saw him. The pause was subtle, but it lingered long enough to be felt. He straightened slightly, forcing a tight smile. "We're, actually out of drip coffee at the moment," he said quickly. The veteran looked behind him at the still steaming coffee pot. "Oh, looks like you've got some right there." Elliot's tone sharpened. "That's reserved for mobile orders." There was no anger in the veteran's eyes, only quiet confusion. "All right," he said slowly. "Could I just get a cup when the next batch is ready?" Elliot shook his head. "You'll have to come back later. We're kind of busy." The cafe wasn't busy. Only 3 people sat at the tables. An older woman reading a newspaper, a college student on her laptop, and a businessman scrolling through his phone. All 3 had heard the exchange, and now the air had gone heavy. The veteran stood still for a moment. He could have argued. He could have said something sharp. But instead, he gave a small nod. Steady, respectful. "Understood," he said quietly. He turned toward the door, the bell jingling again as he stepped outside into the morning light. For a few seconds, the cafe was silent except for the hum of the espresso machine. The older woman lowered her paper, her voice calm but cutting. "You didn't have to do that." Elliot pretended not to hear. "Some customers just don't fit the vibe," he muttered, wiping the counter. Outside, the veteran, Marcus Cole, walked slowly down Main Street, his reflection passing through the cafe's window. He glanced once over his shoulder, just long enough to see the locally owned Community First sign hanging above the door. He gave a small, almost sad smile. Then he kept walking. The late afternoon sun slanted through the cafe windows, casting long amber streaks across the tables. The morning rush was over. The coffee shop was quieter now. Just the soft jazz from the speakers and the rhythmic scrape of a broom against the floor. Elliot Parker hummed to himself as he cleaned. The unpleasant encounter from that morning was already fading from his mind. He told himself he'd done nothing wrong, just protected the atmosphere. Outside, he taped a fresh sign to the window. Locally owned, Community First. He stepped back and admired it, proud of how it looked, clean, simple, respectable. But from a corner table near the window, Mrs. Green, a retired schoolteacher with sharp eyes and silver curls, watched him quietly over her cup of tea. She'd been a regular at Parker's for years, and she'd seen more than most people thought. As Elliot passed her table, she spoke, her voice calm, almost too gentle. "That's a nice sign, Mr. Parker." He smiled, pleased. "Thank you, Mrs. Green. I like to remind folks we're all about community here." She tilted her head slightly, her eyes never leaving him. "Community," she repeated. "That's a big word. Means everyone, doesn't it?" Elliot hesitated, sensing the weight behind her tone. "Of course. Everyone who wants to be part of it." She took a slow sip of her tea. "That veteran you turned away this morning, Marcus Cole, he's part of this community too." The name hit him like a flicker of memory. "The guy with the army jacket?" Mrs. Green nodded. "That's him. Born right here in Brookhaven. Served 12 years overseas. Saved 3 soldiers when their transport was hit in Afghanistan." Elliot blinked. "Really? I didn't know who he was." Mrs. Green set her cup down softly. "You didn't ask." The words hung between them, quiet but sharp. Elliot felt his stomach tighten, but He forced a weak laugh. I just didn't want any trouble, that's all. Mrs. Green looked at him steadily, her eyes soft but unwavering. Son, trouble isn't who walks through your door. It's what you choose to see when they do. Elliot had no reply. Mrs. Green stood slowly, collecting her things. As she passed him, she said in a low voice, "One day you'll understand that respect isn't something you give to certain people. It's something you give to every person." Then she left, the little bell above the door ringing as it closed behind her. Elliot stood there for a moment, staring at the sign on the glass. Locally owned. Community first. For the first time, the words didn't look so clean. They looked like a lie staring back at him. He sighed, turning away, telling himself she was being dramatic. But her words wouldn't leave his mind. Outside, across the street, the faint shape of Marcus Cole could be seen talking with a city worker, laughing easily, his posture proud and kind. And though Elliot didn't yet know it, that same man would soon hold more power over his future than he could ever imagine. The morning started like any other. The espresso machine hissed, the bell above the door chimed, and the comforting rhythm of Parker's coffee house filled the air again. Elliot moved behind the counter, chatting with regulars, trying to shake off the uncomfortable memory of Mrs. Green's words. By 9 a.m., the cafe was full. Construction workers grabbing breakfast sandwiches, office clerks sipping lattes, and college students hunched over laptops. Everything was normal again, until someone unfolded the morning newspaper. A man sitting near the window, one of the regulars, spoke up, his voice cutting through the hum of conversation. "Hey, isn't this the guy you kicked out the other week?" Elliot froze. "What?" The customer turned the paper around, showing the front page. In bold letters, the headline read, "Decorated Army Veteran Marcus Cole, appointed City Commissioner of Economic Development." Beneath it, a photo showed Marcus in a suit, shaking hands with the mayor, smiling humbly, that same calm strength in his eyes. The article praised his service record, his years of volunteer work, and his commitment to rebuilding local businesses and underserved neighborhoods. "Commissioner of Economic Development," another customer murmured. That means he's over, all business permits and grants?" "Yeah," someone else said. "Practically every shop in town has to go through him now." A low chuckle rippled through the room. "Guess it pays to be polite, huh, Elliot?" The words hit harder than anyone knew. Elliot forced a laugh, but it came out thin, hollow. "Yeah, real funny," he said, turning back to wipe the counter, though his hand trembled. The laughter faded. He could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on him. When the rush died down, he finally picked up a copy of the paper himself. The ink smudged against his thumb as he stared at Marcus's photo. He read the first line twice. "Marcus Cole, a Brookhaven native and U.S. Army veteran, has been appointed to lead the city's new community revitalization initiative, which will focus on supporting small businesses across the district." Supporting small businesses. Elliot's heart sank. His shop, his livelihood, depended on city approval for next year's operating grant. He swallowed hard. The irony twisted inside him. Mrs. Green's voice echoed faintly in his head. "One day, you'll understand that respect isn't something you give to certain people." He dropped the paper, the sound of it hitting the counter louder than he expected. The shop felt suddenly too quiet, the smell of coffee too sharp, almost bitter. Through the front window, he watched people walk by, laughing, greeting one another, waving to a passing car. And for the first time in a long while, Elliot Parker, the man who prided himself on running a community-first business, realized he didn't know his own community at all. It was a quiet morning at Parker's coffee house, too quiet. The usual chatter felt muted, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Elliot tried to stay busy, wiping down already clean counters, adjusting stacks of cups, pretending he wasn't waiting for something he couldn't name. Ever since that newspaper headline, the energy in the shop had shifted. Customers looked at him differently now, some curious, some disapproving. Then the sound he'd been dreading. The doorbell chimed. He looked up and froze. Standing in the doorway, dressed in a crisp gray suit and polished shoes, was Marcus Cole. The army jacket was gone, replaced by the confidence of someone who carried authority naturally. A city lapel pin gleamed on his jacket. The room went still. Every whisper stopped. Marcus stepped forward, calm and composed. "Good morning," he said, his tone even but steady. "Commissioner Cole, City of Brookhaven." Elliot swallowed hard, nearly dropping the mug he was holding. "See, Commissioner, good morning." Marcus smiled faintly, though there was no warmth in it, just professionalism. "Don't look so nervous, Mr. Parker. I'm here on official business." Elliot's throat went dry. "Official business?" Marcus glanced around the cafe, scanning the walls, the decor, the locally owned Community First sign still hanging proudly above the counter. "We're reviewing local businesses for the new Community Revitalization Grant," Marcus explained. "It's part of the city's initiative to support small, inclusive establishments that represent Brookhaven's values." The words inclusive establishments landed like a weight in the room. Elliot forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Of course. We're very community-oriented here. We serve everyone." Marcus met his gaze, steady and unblinking. "Everyone." Elliot's forced grin faltered. "Well, yes, of course." Marcus took a slow breath, his tone calm but laced with quiet power. "Interesting. Because the last time I walked in here, I couldn't get a simple cup of coffee." The silence was suffocating. Even the espresso machine seemed to have stopped hissing. Elliot's face flushed red. "Commissioner, I didn't mean, it wasn't personal, I just—" Marcus raised a hand slightly. "You don't have to explain. I already understand." Elliot froze. "You do?" "Yes," Marcus said. "You made a choice. We all make them." He looked around once more, then nodded politely. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Parker. I'll be in touch after the review." And with that, he turned and walked toward the door. The bell chimed softly as he left. Elliot stood rooted behind the counter, his hands trembling against the polished surface. The customers slowly went back to their conversations, but he could feel their eyes lingering, judging, whispering. He looked at the sign again. Locally owned. Community First. For the first time, it didn't feel like pride. It felt like irony carved in glass. Outside the window, Marcus stepped into the sunlight, shaking hands with a city staffer. He smiled politely, his posture straight, his presence strong. Elliot watched him go, a sinking feeling growing in his chest. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It was the slow, painful realization that he had disrespected the very kind of man his father used to tell him to admire. And for the first time, Elliot wished he could take it all back. Every word, every dismissive look, every moment of arrogance. But it was too late. That night, the cafe was dark, except for the faint yellow light over the counter. Elliot sat alone at one of the corner tables, a cold cup of coffee in front of him, untouched. Outside, rain drizzled softly against the window, blurring the streetlights into streaks of gold and gray. He'd sent the last employee home hours ago, telling them he needed to catch up on paperwork. But he hadn't opened a single ledger. He was just sitting, staring at nothing. Marcus's words echoed in his mind. You made a choice. He had. And now that choice sat heavy on his chest. Elliot picked up the newspaper from a few days earlier, the one still lying on the counter, folded neatly but smudged with fingerprints. Marcus's face stared up at him again from the front page. From service to leadership. Marcus Cole, City Commissioner of Economic Development. The article went on to describe how Marcus had spent years helping veterans find jobs, volunteering at shelters, and mentoring at-risk youth. There was even a quote from him. Leadership is about service, not power. Everyone deserves dignity, no matter who they are. Elliot set the paper down slowly, his stomach twisting. He remembered his father, a Vietnam veteran. He could still hear his voice. Son, you don't ever disrespect someone who wore the uniform. Doesn't matter where they're from or what they look like. When Elliot was younger, his dad used to take him to Veterans Day parades downtown. He'd stand proud, saluting the men and women marching by. And every year he'd say the same thing. These are the people who made it possible for you to live your dream. Elliot looked around his cafe. His dream. The warm lights, the polished wood, the smell of roasted beans. All of it built on hard work, yes, but also on the peace others had fought to protect. And he had thrown that peace back in someone's face. He put his head in his hands. The weight of shame felt like gravity itself. Through the window, he saw his own reflection, tired, worn, and small. Behind that reflection, he saw the sign still taped to the glass. Locally owned, community first. He stared at the words, whispering to himself, "What community? Just the ones that make me comfortable?" The rain outside grew heavier, the sound tapping gently against the glass like a heartbeat. For the first time, Elliot didn't try to justify himself. He didn't tell himself Marcus misunderstood. He knew the truth now. It hadn't been about coffee. It had been about prejudice, about ego. And for the first time in a long time, Elliot Parker felt something unfamiliar, the need to make things right. He turned off the lights, locked up, and stood in the rain for a moment, letting the cold drops soak through his shirt, as if trying to wash something off that went far deeper than skin. Then he took a deep breath and said quietly, "Tomorrow I'm going to fix this." And for once, he meant it. The next morning, the sun rose pale and cold over Brookhaven City Hall. A steady breeze rustled the flags out front, and the marble steps gleamed faintly with dew. Elliot Parker stood at the bottom of those steps, clutching his coffee cup like a lifeline. He'd barely slept. His eyes were red, his heart pounding harder than he wanted to admit. He wasn't dressed like the polished shop owner the city knew. No apron, no carefully combed hair, just jeans, a wrinkled shirt, and sincerity. He took a deep breath and climbed the steps. Each one felt heavier than the last. Inside, the hallway smelled faintly of paper and polish. His footsteps echoed as he made his way to the Office of Economic Development. The brass plaque on the door read, "Marcus Cole, City Commissioner." Elliot paused for a moment, staring at the name. Then he knocked softly. A voice inside answered, calm and steady, "Come in." Elliot opened the door. Marcus stood near the window, sunlight outlining his figure. He wasn't in a suit this time, just a rolled-up dress shirt, reviewing files. He looked up, his expression neutral but curious. "Mr. Parker," Marcus said evenly, "to what do I owe the visit?" Elliot swallowed hard. His throat felt dry. I came to apologize." Marcus set his papers aside, folding his arms slowly. Go on." Elliot hesitated, then stepped forward. "I wanted to say I was wrong. That day in the cafe, I treated you like you didn't belong there. And you did. You do. I had no reason, no excuse. I judged you before I even knew you." The silence that followed was long and heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioner. Marcus didn't speak right away. He studied Elliot, not with anger, but with something quieter. Something like disappointment wrapped in wisdom. "What made you change your mind?" Marcus asked at last. Elliot looked down at his hands. "I read about you, about your service, about everything you've done for the city. And I realized I've never done half as much good as you have. I built a business to serve the community, but I didn't even know what that meant until now." He exhaled shakily. "I'm ashamed of what I did, and I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to tell you that to your face." Marcus stepped closer, his voice calm but firm. "Mr. Parker, do you know why I didn't call you out that day? Why I didn't make a scene?" Elliot shook his head. "Because I've seen worse," Marcus said quietly. "In the military, you learn that dignity isn't something anyone can take from you. It's something you decide to keep." Elliot's eyes burned. "You had every right to be angry." Marcus nodded slowly. "Maybe. But anger doesn't change hearts. People do." Elliot looked up, tears beginning to gather in his eyes. "So what now?" Marcus offered a small, measured smile. "Now, you go back and do what you should have done the first time. Treat people with respect. Every person. Not because of who they are, but because of who you want to be." Elliot nodded, his voice breaking slightly. "Thank you. You didn't have to—" Marcus cut him off gently. "You're right, I didn't. But people gave me second chances once, too." He reached for a folder on his desk and handed it to Elliot. Inside was a form stamped approved, the Community Revitalization Grant for Parker's Coffee House. Elliot blinked, stunned. You're still approving it?" Marcus smiled faintly. "I believe in second chances, Mr. Parker. Don't waste it." Elliot held the folder like something sacred. For the first time in years, he felt small, but in the best way possible. "Thank you, Commissioner," he said quietly. Marcus nodded. "Just make sure the next time someone walks through your door, you see the person before you see the difference." Elliot's voice cracked. I will. As he left the office, the sunlight spilling through the tall windows seemed brighter than before. The air felt lighter. And for the first time in a long time, Elliot wasn't thinking about profits or reputation, only about doing right. A week later, Main Street was alive with sunlight and laughter. The air smelled of spring, fresh bread from the bakery next door, flowers from the corner stall, and coffee brewing from Parker's. But the little cafe didn't look quite the same anymore. The old sign, locally owned, community first, was gone. In its place, above the door, hung a new one, hand-painted in warm tones, all are welcome, no exceptions. Elliot Parker stood on a ladder, tightening the final screw, while a few early customers watched curiously from the sidewalk. When he climbed down, his hands were shaking, not from fear this time, but from relief. He stepped back, wiping his palms on his apron, and smiled. For the first time, the sign felt honest. The doorbell chimed. He turned and froze. Standing in the doorway in a simple gray jacket and jeans was Marcus Cole. No suit, no title. Just a man out for morning coffee. The cafe went quiet again, but this time, it wasn't tension. It was respect. Marcus smiled slightly. Morning. Elliot nodded, his voice soft but steady. Good morning, sir. Black coffee? No sugar? Marcus raised an eyebrow, amused. You remembered? Elliot poured the cup himself, slow, careful, deliberate. When he handed it over, Marcus took it, inhaled the steam, and smiled. Smells better than last time? Elliot laughed nervously. I've been working on things. Marcus took a sip, savoring the warmth. I can tell. He reached for his wallet, but Elliot shook his head. It's on the house. Marcus looked him in the eye. Respect doesn't mean free coffee. Elliot hesitated, then nodded. You're right. Respect means treating people right, every time. Marcus smiled, setting a few bills on the counter anyway. Then, we're both learning something. He took a seat by the window, the same spot Mrs. Green used to sit in, and watched the morning crowd come and go. The cafe felt different now, more alive. The tension that once hung in the air had been replaced by something warmer, understanding. As Marcus sat quietly sipping his coffee, a young woman approached the counter, nervous, holding a resume. Are you still hiring? She asked softly. Elliot smiled. Yes. And what's your name? Jasmine, she said. Just moved here. Well, Jasmine, Elliot said. Welcome to Brookhaven. Marcus watched from his table, a proud smile tugging at his lips. The moment was small, but it was everything. Outside, sunlight poured through the window, catching the edges of the new sign. All are welcome, no exceptions. The words glowed softly in gold paint, reflecting in the glass. Marcus finished his coffee, stood, and walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned back and said quietly, You've got a good place here now, Mr. Parker. Keep it that way. Elliot nodded. I will. The bell jingled as Marcus stepped outside, disappearing into the crowd. Elliot stood there for a moment, looking at the sunlight streaming through the door. He thought about second chances, how they weren't just given, they were earned. And for the first time in a long time, he felt at peace. He looked up at the sign again and whispered to himself, This is what community really means.